Hello friends. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. This happened several years ago now. I've only ever told a handful of people about it. My wife knows, my younger brother knows, and one close friend who I trusted enough not to look at me like I was losing my grip on reality. I'm telling it here, because I still don't have an explanation. And at this point in my life, I've accepted that I probably never will. I'm 36 years old now, and I live in the Pacific Northwest, not far from the Cascade Range in Washington State. I've spent most of my adult life around mountains. For nearly a decade, skiing wasn't just something I did. It was who I was. From my late teens into my mid-20s, I competed professionally in alpine skiing, mostly downhill and Super G. I raced nationally, traveled constantly, and pushed my body harder than I probably should have. Eventually, my knees and lower back started sending warnings I couldn't ignore anymore. No dramatic crash, no headline injury, just years of impact catching up to me. I stepped away from competitive racing at 27, but retiring from competition doesn't mean you stop skiing. If anything, it frees you. No crowds, no lift lines, no resort noise. Just snow, silence, and terrain that hasn't been groomed into submission. I fell in love with backcountry skiing, the kind where you earn every descent and accept the risks that come with it. And yes, before anyone says it, I knew what I was doing. I was avalanche trained, wilderness first aid certified. I carried proper gear, checked forecasts obsessively, and followed protocols. I'd done dozens of solo backcountry trips over the years without incident, until the day everything went wrong. The plan that morning was simple. There's a remote section of the North Cascades about 3 hours north of where I lived at the time. I'd skied that range before, not frequently, but enough to be familiar with the terrain. I'd been watching the weather for days. The forecast called for light snowfall, a few inches at most, and manageable winds. Avalanche conditions were listed as moderate. Not ideal, but not alarming. I checked them the night before. I checked again that morning. Everything looked acceptable. I left before dawn, drove up an empty highway, and parked at a pull-off just as the sun began to creep over the peaks. The world was quiet in that way only mountains can be. No traffic, no voices, just wind high above the tree line. I strapped on my skins and started climbing. About an hour into the ascent, I noticed the first red flag. The snowfall picked up faster than predicted. That alone wasn't unusual. Mountain forecasts are rarely perfect. But the wind had shifted direction. It was coming in stronger, cutting sideways instead of flowing downhill. Visibility started dropping at a pace I didn't like. I stopped and reassessed. The smart move would have been to turn around, but I was already near the top of a line I'd been excited about all week. A clean, open descent through a natural bowl that funneled into a wide exit. I told myself one run, just one. I'd ski conservatively, enjoy it, and call it early. I've replayed that decision more times than I can count. And yes, I know how stupid it was. The descent started fine. The pitch was manageable, and I stayed controlled, avoiding anything aggressive. The snow felt heavier than expected, but nothing alarming. Then, about 2/3 of the way down, the mountain reminded me who was in charge. If you've never been caught in an avalanche, it's impossible to explain how fast it happens. 1 second you're skiing, the next, the ground simply isn't solid anymore. The snow moved, and I moved with it. I got lucky. It wasn't a massive slide, probably a Class 2. Enough force to knock me off my skis and send me tumbling, but not enough to bury me completely. I slid maybe 30 or 40 yards before slamming into something solid. The impact stopped me instantly. I don't know what it was. Rock, buried tree, something hidden under the snowpack. But I remember the pain in my left leg before anything else. I lay there, gasping, trying to convince myself it wasn't serious. It was. My skis had released, which was good, but one of them had been dragged further downhill, completely out of sight. When I tried to stand, my leg buckled under me. The pain was overwhelming, sharp, deep, and immediate, and the snow was still coming down, heavier now. I sat there for several minutes, forcing myself to think. I couldn't ski out without my second ski, even if my leg had worked, which it didn't. Staying put wasn't realistic either. Only one person knew where I was that day, and it would be hours before they even suspected something was wrong. Digging in and waiting out the storm wasn't an option. I didn't have overnight supplies, and the temperature was dropping fast. That left one choice: move. I secured what gear I could, planted the one ski pole I still had, and started limping downhill. Every step sent pain shooting through my leg, but adrenaline kept me upright. The snowfall intensified. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and that's when I heard something behind me. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Shock does strange things to the brain, and hypothermia can cause vivid hallucinations. That was my rational explanation as I turned around. But I wasn't alone. Another skier was moving toward me through the snowfall. I can't fully describe the emotion that hit me when I saw him. Relief, fear, disbelief, all at once. He was alone, geared for backcountry travel, moving with calm efficiency. When he reached me, he pulled off his helmet to adjust his goggles and asked if I was injured. I told him everything. Without hesitation, he stepped in close and let me put my arm around his shoulder. We started moving together, slowly, downhill. Something about it felt wrong. Not dangerous, just off. It didn't feel like coincidence. We talked as we moved, mostly practical things. How far to tree line, whether I could keep going. Basic survival conversation. At one point, he said something that stuck with me. He said he hadn't used his legs in a long time, and it felt good to be back on solid ground. I laughed, assuming it was some obscure ski joke or metaphor I didn't understand. He didn't laugh back. Eventually, I had to stop. I leaned against a tree and closed my eyes, not even for 5 seconds, just long enough to breathe through the pain. When I opened them, he was gone. No movement, no sound, no skier. I called out to him, panic rising fast. Looked around, searched the snow, expecting to see tracks, signs of a fall, anything. There was nothing. No tracks except my own. I felt sick. I don't know how I made it back to my car. The rest of the descent is a blur of pain, cold, and stubborn refusal to stop moving. Somehow, I reached the parking area, drove myself to the hospital, and collapsed into a chair in the ER. The diagnosis was shockingly mild. Severe sprain. No fracture. The doctor told me I was incredibly lucky. Days later, while recovering at home, I couldn't stop thinking about the skier. I searched local forums, accident reports, mountain incident logs. That's when I found it. An article about a backcountry skier who'd gone missing during a storm weeks earlier, on the same mountain range. No body recovered. Presumed dead. There were no photos, no social media trail, just a name. And I've never been able to forget it. I still ski, but never alone. Sometimes during heavy snowfall, I think about what helped me off that mountain, about the shoulder under my arm, about the voice in the storm, and I wonder whether he was saving me or finishing what he never got to. People think the scariest part of a blizzard is being stranded outside. They never talk about what happens when you're warm, safe inside your house, and someone knocks anyway. Last winter, during one of the worst storms upstate New York has seen in years, a man came to my door asking for help. I didn't let him in, and I'm convinced now that decision is the only reason I'm still alive. I'm 27 and live alone in a small rental house in upstate New York, surrounded by trees and long, empty roads. The kind of place where winter isn't cozy. It's isolating. I work remotely in finance. Most days, I don't speak to anyone face to face. Just emails, calls, spreadsheets, and silence. That silence usually feels comforting. During the blizzard, it felt like something watching. The news had been warning everyone for days. This wasn't supposed to be a normal storm. They told people to stay off the roads, prepare for power outages, and avoid unnecessary travel. I listened. I stocked up on food, locked my doors, and settled in. By 8 p.m., I couldn't see past my porch. Blizzard wind is constant. Doesn't rise and fall. It presses against the house like it's trying to get in. Around 10:30 p.m., I heard something that didn't belong, a heavy thud. Then a dragging sound, slow and deliberate. I told myself it was a tree branch falling. 15 minutes later, I heard a car horn, weak, short, almost hesitant. From my front window, I could barely make out headlights near the end of my driveway. No movement, no door opening. With the storm the way it was, I didn't go outside. I went back to the couch. At 11 p.m., someone knocked on my door. I asked who it was. A man answered. He said his car was stuck and he needed to come inside to warm up and use a phone. His voice sounded strained, like he was cold. I cracked the door with the chain still on. He was covered in snow. Jacket, hair, shoulders, shivering. Everything about him looked right. Until I looked down. His boots were clean. Not wet, not snowy, not icy. Clean. Something cold settled in my stomach. I told him I would call for help. He asked to be let in again, more firmly this time. I closed the door and locked it. While I was on the phone with 911, I heard footsteps leave my porch. They didn't fade away. They moved around the side of my house. I peeked through a side window. He was standing near the corner of the house, staring up at my windows. Not pacing, not moving, waiting. The banging on my back door wasn't frantic. It was controlled, like someone testing how strong it was. I grabbed a kitchen knife and locked myself in my bedroom. After a minute, the banging stopped. Silence returned. Then the car horn sounded again, long and continuous. Police arrived shortly after. They found a car buried in a snowbank down the road. Cold engine. No footprints leading from the car to my house, only footprints around my driveway. Stopping at the road. As they drove away, one of the officers said something quietly to the other. I couldn't hear what it was, but the look on his face told me this wasn't the first time. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made my heart jump. Wind, ice shifting, the house settling. By morning, the storm had passed. That's when things got worse. I went outside to inspect the property. On my bedroom window, I saw muddy handprints, high up, too high for someone standing normally. They weren't there when the police searched the night before. That meant one of two things. He came back, or he never left. A few days later, I found out another house half a mile away had been broken into during the storm. No valuables taken, nothing missing, just muddy footprints inside, like someone had wandered through and left. That's when I started digging. I spoke to neighbors, older ones, people who'd lived there a long time. There were other incidents, always during storms, always when visibility was low, always involving a man asking for help. One woman told me something I can't forget. She said her husband opened the door once, years ago. The man stepped inside, and then just stood there, looking around the house like he was memorizing it. I went back to the spot where the car had been found. The snow had melted enough to reveal something unsettling. The car hadn't slid off the road. It had been parked there, perfectly, like it was placed. A week later, during another snowfall, lighter this time, I heard something outside my bedroom window. Not knocking, breathing, slow, close. When I checked in the morning, there were no footprints, just clean, dry marks on the glass, at knee height, like someone had been crouching there, waiting for me to change my mind. I don't answer knocks anymore, especially during storms, because I don't think he was trying to get warm. I think he was looking for a house where someone would finally let him stay. People think dying in a blizzard is about freezing to death. They imagine snow, darkness, and the cold slowly putting you to sleep. What they don't tell you is this. Sometimes the storm doesn't kill you. Sometimes it delivers you. If my front door hadn't frozen shut, if the snow hadn't come down just a little harder, I wouldn't have spent a night inside a house where something was waiting long before I ever knocked. I moved to western South Dakota because it felt empty. Not empty like abandoned, empty like forgotten. The land stretched flat for miles, broken only by fence posts, dead trees, and roads that felt optional. The house I bought sat alone on several acres of frozen prairie. No streetlights, no traffic, just wind and sky. I wasn't lonely there. I was comfortable. For almost 3 years, nothing strange happened. Winters came and went. Snowstorms rolled through, buried everything, then melted away. Until early February. The storm didn't announce itself. It crept in while I was at work. Light snow at first, then heavier, then aggressive. Wind followed soon after, turning the world white and loud. My phone buzzed with weather alerts. Roads were already closing further north. My boss didn't hesitate. He sent everyone home immediately. The drive started normal. Then visibility vanished. Snow erased the road. Wind shoved my truck sideways. Headlights reflected back into my eyes, making it feel like I was driving through fog made of knives. When I finally pulled into my driveway, my hands were shaking. I was home. Or so I thought. The lock wouldn't turn. Ice had swallowed it completely. I tried everything. Heat from my breath, pounding it, even ramming my shoulder into the door. Nothing worked. The storm screamed behind me. I sat in my truck with the heater blasting, telling myself I'd wait it out. But snow piled faster than my tires could sink. Within minutes, I realized the truth. I wasn't waiting for the storm to pass. I was watching it trap me. Driving out became impossible. Staying meant running out of gas. That left one option. The nearest house was far, a quarter mile at least. The wind nearly knocked me down when I stepped out. Snow burned my face. My hands went numb fast. By the time I reached the house, I was shaking so hard I could barely knock. I almost turned back. Then the door exploded open. He looked ordinary, forgettable, mid-50s, average height, plain clothes. But his eyes didn't stay still. They kept moving, ceiling, hallway, corners, like he was tracking something unseen. He said his name was Gordon. I explained my situation. He didn't ask questions. He stepped aside and let me in. The house was warm. Too warm. The air felt heavy, stale, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. Furniture sat in odd positions, as if no one fully committed to where things belonged. He offered me the couch and sat across from me. I tried making conversation. He answered, but never fully. His attention drifted constantly. He'd stop mid-sentence and stare at the wall like he was listening to something inside it. Eventually, I told him I needed sleep. He agreed instantly. Too easily. The lights went out. He didn't leave right away. He stood in the doorway, watching. I pretended to sleep. After a long moment, he finally walked down the hallway. I closed my eyes. And that's when the sound started. Heavy thumping. Dragging. From above me. The house had no second floor. I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling, listening as the sounds moved slowly, deliberately, back and forth. And then something hit the roof so hard the whole house shook. I sat up and saw Gordon standing in the doorway again, watching. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw him standing there. He hadn't made a sound. No footsteps. No door. Creak. Just suddenly. There. His face looked different in the dark. Tighter. More focused. Like he'd finally made a decision. I opened my mouth to speak. He rushed me. We crashed to the floor hard enough to knock the air out of me. His hands went straight for my throat. He was stronger than he looked. Desperate strength. As we struggled, he started yelling. Not at me, but past me. Like someone else was in the room. She's been alone too long. She hates the quiet. She needs someone new. I fought blindly, panic flooding my body. My vision blurred. My lungs burned. I managed to knee him hard and shove him off. I didn't think. I ran. I bolted for the door, barely stopping to grab my coat. I didn't put it on. I didn't slow down. Behind me, he screamed something that still crawls into my head sometimes when it's quiet. She won't forgive you. The storm swallowed his voice as soon as I hit the snow. I don't remember how long I ran, only that my lungs felt like glass and my legs barely worked. When the next house appeared through the snow, I collapsed against the door and pounded until it opened. Normal people answered. They didn't ask questions. They pulled me inside. In the morning, over coffee, I told them everything. They didn't look surprised. They told me Gordon had lived out there for years. Then they told me about his wife. She disappeared nearly 10 years earlier. No body. No investigation. Just silence. I stayed quiet. I didn't tell them about the sounds above the ceiling. I didn't tell them about how Gordon talked like she was still there. Because as the storm cleared and the sun came up, something bothered me. From the road, Gordon's house looked wrong. The roof line sagged slightly, like something heavy had been up there for a very long time. I reported everything. Nothing happened. I still live in my house, 3 winters later. Sometimes during blizzards, I hear sounds on my own roof. Heavy, slow, dragging. And every time I drive past Gordon's place, I notice something new. The snow on his roof melts unevenly, like there's still heat inside, like something up there isn't finished waiting.